Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today, I want to talk about two builds that I think are going to massively shine in the upcoming 325 setlist of Kalguur expansion. I used to say League, but this patch is going to be so freaking massive, and I cannot wait until Friday to, get my hands on a lot of loot from ships and boats and stuff like that. Anyway, so what am I talking today is two builds that I think are going to be insanely strong this patch, even stronger than before, and it is either the strength stacking, I leave the ascendancy out for now, reasons for that a bit later, and accuracy stacking. So, as you guys know, there has been a lot of changes to all the melee skills. They lose their flat damage, but they got like buffed like double, triple, in some cases even quadra, the damage effectiveness of those. And that's why I think that those two builds, like strength stacking and accuracy stacking, will be insanely strong to have like this one build for the entire kind of league, because both of those builds are known to be insanely expensive in the end game. I would say you can spend 15, 20, 30 mirrors in those, talking about one passive voices, original sin, like crazy stuff, right? But the thing though is, I want to talk about the league start perspective of those, right? And I think both of them are viable to league start, but they will have like a pretty insane gearing and scaling curve going into the end game. If we take a look at the bare bones, let's talk about patch notes wise with all these like melee skill changes and the damage effectiveness and so on and so forth, before we take a look at the potential gearing for league start with those two characters, as well as going over the defensive mechanics as well. So let's take any freaking melee skill, whatever it is. Let's take Ice Shot. Yeah, Ice Shot. Doesn't really matter. So, wait, it's a bad example. Damn. What about this one here? Ground Slam of Earth Shaking, or Ground Slam in general. So, basically, they all got, like, insanely buffed with the damage effectiveness, coming from, like, in the level 20 gems, 356 a gem level 20, previously 188, so that's actually, like, a bad example, but it's like double the damage, right? And there is other skills going up to like 400, 500% damage effectiveness. But the thing though is, what does that actually mean? So basically in PoE, if you add any form of like flat damage to your skills, whether it's coming from a weapon, from like an Abyss Jewel, or in the Strength Stacker way, for example, Replica Alberons or the Stormrider Boots, if you add flat damage, then skills will scale differently with this damage. So both of these characters will get insane amounts of flat damage coming from these like stat stacking attributes, whether it's accuracy or strength or a combination of both, which means they basically, if you add like 10 to 20 damage coming from an Abyss Jewel, for example, right, and the skill has like 409% damage effectiveness, you basically quadra the damage for this skill. So instead of like doing 10 damage with a default attack, you will do like 40 damage using the Frostblade skills, for example. I don't want to do the exact math or anything, I just want to give you guys an understanding what does damage effectiveness means for these skills. And if we take a look at both of the build enabling items, or the accuracy stacker is going to be the Stormrider boots, or the lower version, which is like Windbreak, usable at level 20 here with the Cloud Whisper boots and stuff. They basically give you an insane amount of lightning damage. In the endgame versions, you reach over 100,000 accuracy and stuff like that. So the damage of those things will be ridiculous. Same as, for example, the Replica Alberons giving you flat damage per strength. And then with a multiplier of like 400% damage effectiveness, this is going to be absolutely ridiculous. But it's not only about the damage. What about the defensive layers, right? So the problem with the upcoming patch, or at least let's say the strongest version of making a tanky character used to be physical damage, taking his element, or chaos, going CI, going blocking, all these like kind of like damage shifting things. And if you're able, in some cases like Armor Stacker or some chieftains with the Purity of Fire kind of thingy, they convert 100% of the incoming physical damage to element, so they can ignore any form of armor or damage mitigation in the physical part. If they go CI, they are immune to chaos as well, so the only thing left is elemental damage. And then if they go just stack 90% max res, you're gonna be insanely tanky. With the upcoming patch, this is no longer be the case, just because Mark already told us that it should not be possible to get 100% physical damage taken as element. A lot of these sources got removed. The Taste of Hate, for example, lost the physical damage taken as cold damage. The Watcher's Eye modifiers and so on and so forth are all completely gone. Same as like temple modifiers on gear and so on. There is still going to be a few sources of this, and it's still very strong and potent, but you're not going to reach the 100% anymore. So all these like completely ignoring physical damage will be kind of a thing from the past. So how to make a tanky character in the new way, right? I think it's going to be like a trifecta of tankiness, which is going to be a part of like spell suppression cap for it still being like 50% damage reduction against spells. It's going to be maximum resistance. There are going to be more wheels and more access to maximum resistance now, even on rare jewels or the base jewels that can roll 1 to maximum resistance, and new war cries giving you max resistance, but also endurance charges. And endurance charges have been changed in the upcoming league and will also grant you now, instead of the 4% all res per jewel, it will give you 4% additional damage reduction. And if you take a look, for example, at my charge stacking Slayer from last league, the Slayer didn't have a lot of armor or anything, but it was still very, very tanky. Obviously, I ran like 13 or 14 endurance charges from all the charge stacking, giving me passively like 60 to 70% physical damage mitigation. And this will now also apply to the endurance charge for the elemental defensive layer, right? And both of these builds, both the Strength Stacker and the Accuracy Stacker, are going to be a Marauder starting area. I left the Ascendancy out in the start because both of them will start as a Juggernaut, but once you get like the undeniable Forbidden Flame Flash combo, which can cost you like over 100 divines at some point of the league, right? But it definitely means that you can branch out to be a Berserk or even a Chieftain to get very easy access to the 90% maximum resistance. But as a Marauder, you will have access to all the endurance charges. You can branch out to the right side of the tree, going for all the spell suppression nodes. So we're going to have maximum resistance stacking. We're going to have access to the endurance charges, and we're also going to have access to spell suppression, giving us a very, very beefy and tanky layer for the baseline. As an example, if you would start as a witch, you're not going to have access to endurance charges, you barely have access to spell suppression, you don't have access to armor, you don't have access, a little bit of access to maximum resistance, but that's about it. That's why I think like the bottom side of the tree looks like much stronger the upcoming league, just because of these changes. And then, obviously, something like block will also be very dominant, coming with the gladiator changes and so on and so forth. And I think there's also going to be a bunch of blocking nodes added to the tree once updated. Good, so let's talk about the gearing portion, or at least, like, how would you set this one up, right? I actually league started an Accuracy Stacker back in 3.17. It's a while ago, but things didn't change at all. It's still, like, the complete same gearing process, and I think with about, I'd say like 50 to 100 chaos investment, you should have a very decent starter as for accuracy stacking. Should not have any problems doing any tier 60 maps, as shown in this video footage, which is like day 4 or day 5 of the league. It's very fast, it's very strong, and now with the upcoming changes to melee skills, in this case, like for example Lightning Strike, Frostblade, Molten Strike, something like that, any strike skills with projectiles is going to be insanely strong, just as a default, with getting all these extra added damage. The only downside here is, and this will be based on both of these builds, they need specific items to even work. For the Accuracy Stacker, it's going to be, as I mentioned before, the Storm Rider boots, or the earlier versions, which is Windbreak or Cloud Whisper boots. Cloud Whisper boots are usable at level 20, and they usually come on the first day, but it's just meta depending. Sometimes you get them for 1 chaos, sometimes it costs like 10 chaos or anything like that, but they are definitely available on day 1 of the league. So instead, you would just go as, I don't know, like Thunder Juggernaut or Lightning Strike Juggernaut or anything like that to get going. And once you just have those in Life Surge, and you're always going to have a couple of chaos while doing the campaign or finding your first divine and convert that into chaos, and you're just going to buy a pair of these boots. But until then, I would just go ahead and I don't place Thunder or anything. You know, melee skills are buffed, so you just have a typical just based on your physical damage, right? But you should have very early access to these boots, maybe a couple hours after the league for the guys that are rushing the campaign and stuff like that. But they are a ritual base, so you need people to actually complete ritual and sell those bases. You will not be able to drop those anywhere else in the game, basically, right? Same with the Strength Stacker, which kind of needs the Replica Albaron's Warpath to get this chaos damage going. I personally would say I would probably just do the same thing, just starting as a Thunder character or something like that. Any melee skill on Juggernaut should be super fine, could be Bone Shatter, anything like that. But I would most likely branch out and get myself a Brutus Lead Sprinkler early on because of the 4 to 7 fire damage to attacks with this weapon per 10 strength. Brutus Lead Sprinkler is usable at level 28, and they are global drop basically, so they should pop up very, very early, and I don't think many people will have a high demand on the Brutus Lead Sprinkler early on in the campaign, so I see this item going for like 1 to 5 chaos or something. And then you could basically already start strength stacking. You could go Infernal Blow. You could go... There's so many different skills that would work with that, but you have a generic way of getting something out of your strength, because later on you will have to take something like a Crown of Ice to get this increase in reductions to spell damage to also apply to attacks at 150% of their value, and then going with the Iron Will Keystone to get the extra damage. But this is all like later stuff. This would be like early mapping or something like that. But the way I would do it, I would actually be more interested in a Wonder setup for Kinetic Blast, because Kinetic Blast has now a baked-in Battle Mage's Cry, basically. Increase in reductions to spell damage, also applied to attack damage for the skill for 200% of the value, which means it's even stronger in the skill gem than actually a Crown of Ice with only having 150, and Battle Mage's Cry used to have 150 as well with maximum power, but scaled by buff effect. So that also means you don't need a Red Blade banner, you don't need the infinite power anymore, you don't need to run the Crown of Ice with a Wonder setup, and I think that is going to be very, very strong. And you would get access to that at level 28, I think, when you get the skill gem. And I think then you can use something like, what is it, Duedris Gloves PoE Wiki, maybe I find it. Duedris Malevolence, which are... No, wait, this is the higher version, I think. Drop disabled. I don't know, like, there was like Tenur... Yeah, these ones, right? Yeah. So these are actually some early level gloves. They are like level 12. I actually thought it was like 60% spell damage, but... There might have been changes. Maybe this is like outdated. Doesn't really matter. But just thinking about, you get a 100% increased spell damage for your strength stacker early on, and then use KB and get 2 times the value of that, and then converting it back into attack damage from the Iron Will Keystone here. This would be insanely powerful, thinking about, hey, my gloves give me 200% increased attack damage, for example, and those kind of things, either you find them yourself or, I don't know, buy it on trade for like an alchemy early on, should be quite easy, as well as getting something like an Astra Mantis, which is a very strong stat stacking item early on to get you going. Same as like something like the Iron Fortress, giving you basically a block cap for strength stackers, and as well as like increased damage from the strength scaling. On the other hand, if we take a look at the early gearing for something like an Accuracy Stacker, it is a very, very generic scaling here, right? So basically, if we take a look at the items that I used here on this character, and I don't think this is gonna be expensive at all, that's why I say like probably 50 chaos, and you should have probably the exact same setup besides like the 6-link breastplate that I was wearing in this kind of setup, right? We're having something like... if it loads, the Obscurantis helmet, usually 1 or 2 chaos or something like that, giving you a shit ton of accuracy, as well as increased projectile damage per 200 accuracy. So that's why I said before, you want to use skills with projectiles, Lightning Strike, or Molten Strike, or Frost Blades, or anything like that. Then the Orscam Gloves, giving you attack critical strike chance, and Assassin's Mark, and spell suppression, stuff like that, and global accuracy rating. Usually goes for a chaos or 2 early on. Then you have the Hinekora Sight, a very, very cheap item as well, with giving you up to 1000 accuracy. You have the Replica Last Resort, so you want to go like low life at this point. Even if you only run like a 1500 life after being low life with Petrified Blood, you're going to be still somewhat tanky, especially now with endurance charges, giving you a shit ton of accuracy and attack speed once you go on low life. And all this kind of like this entire setup here should cost you like 50 chaos or something. And then if you go further, if you say, hey, I'm sitting on like 2-3 divines early on, you could then branch out, investing into your passive skill tree with the Transcendent Spirit setup over here in the middle on the Scion wheel. But as I said, you can definitely check out the POBs from the older videos, because nothing really has changed. A Stygian buys, or at least the unique one, shouldn't be too expensive. You don't need to go for like 100% roll, because these are obviously going to be more expensive, but you know, the Darkness Enthroned shouldn't be expensive. And then some Abyss Jewels with like some accuracy, multiplier, life, something like that. Auto Search, probably 1 or 2 chaos. And you should be fairly strong in the early game setup, with the potential then to be able to farm all the currency to get those kind of characters into the next level and upgrading step by step to try to reach like insane amounts of like scaling. But yeah, these are the 2 builds that I personally kind of like thinking of league starting, even though it's going to be rough in the start, right? Because you're not gonna have access to those at level 1. Sometimes you don't even have the skills whatsoever, so you need to trade for them. But still, I think if you just sit through the early stuff, I think you're gonna have a very good experience once you start mapping and grinding your currency, because like a 50 chaos accuracy stacker should be able, without any problems, doing all the regular content, your void stones and those kind of things. Not talking about Uber bosses, of course, but you know which league starter does Uber bosses on a budget anyways, unless it's like some trapper or miner, but they usually suck at mapping anyways. Alright guys, these are my 2 personal recommendations for being like insane 0 to hero characters. I'm most likely going to start strength stacking, because I really like the idea with the Protoss Lit Sprinkler. First, I was thinking about going accuracy stacking first, and then spend like 1, 2, 3 divines on it, or maybe 10 in the early stages, and then farm out for replica Alberons, and then swap to a strength stacker. But I think with the Protoss Lit Sprinkler it should work just fine. And I also think the strength stacker, the wonder type that I plan to play in my mid league and stuff like that, and end league, should be one of the strongest characters this game has seen, and most likely going to be stronger than ever before. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. What are you league starting? Let me know in the comments below, and see you in the next video.